All right, so I am doing my video in response over the Heath book, chapter 4 and 5. And I just want to kind of say at the beginning, this book was kind of a hard read for me to kind of get into, but now that I'm finally following the families, understanding kind of where the book is going and the type of style that she's writing in, I really like chapter 4 and I really like chapter 5. I feel like I'm invested in these characters and I'm really learning a lot from what they have gone through, and I'm kind of like on the edge of my seat about what's gonna happen next. So chapter 4 went along with a new kind of a family of Robert, Richard, and Lisa. They lived in Rodeville. So Lisa and her sister talked about their childhood and kind of their parents' childhood, and it came a lot from lots of spanking, discipline. There was lots of hardcore family time, and they were raised by their parents, and so they were kind of reflecting on how they raised their children. And so they said that their parents were always there for everything. They stayed at home with them. They saw everything they went to. Now they can't really remember what kind of stages their child started walking in, or just they remember that they had to pay more during this time at the daycare because they were working, they were in school, and they didn't have time to stay at home with their kids. And so it was a lot of daycare, and so the daycare ladies almost knew more than they knew. So now I was just also gonna point out too that they have to keep up with different kind of schedules now. Technology is now more incorporated into the lives, so that's how it's a little bit different from when they were kids. So I posed a question. It said, do parents and kids have anything to talk about? And so one of our characters was saying that that she would drive home with her kids. Oh, excuse me, sorry. Drive home with her kids and talk with them about 4-H, talk with them about what they went through at school, talk about their friends. And for parents and kids that don't have that, when are you getting time with your child? When you have to put in that extra effort, block out that time to be able to talk with them about their lives so they can trust in you. And it kind of points the point that other kids aren't exposed to certain things like that. They aren't exposed to having their parent ask them, how was your day at school? Or, oh, I talked to so-and-so's mom, I heard this and this and this. So it kind of highlights that you need to be involved as best as you can. I did write down that on page 85, there was a quote that kind of stuck with me. It said, what you talk with your kids about, not what you talk to them about. I think that's really big, and I think that some parents kind of forget that sometimes, that it needs to be more of a conversational approach to kind of working things out together rather than telling them, you have to do this. Because we've noticed that kids, you know, they lash out. They just want to be accepted, and still obviously there's discipline and they need to know where the line is, but to be able to feel comfortable to tell you those things. So that was kind of more chapter 4 that I took away from, and then going into chapter 5, I wrote down that it was really interesting reading about Zinnia May and kind of her background and how her kids had kind of developed. And so I said that sometimes parents don't always pick up on things that they may miss. And I wrote down that when Zinnia was watching TV, her soap opera, and her daughter Donna was on the floor and they had the recording going, she said that she doesn't remember Donna talking very much, but she was talking, but Zinnia May was just occupied with other things, so she didn't realize it. And so I also kind of noticed that kind of back in the day that it didn't really seem like there was a lot of pressure from parents to go on to college or to kind of make those extra things. It was just kind of, oh, you do kind of whatever you want to do, figure it out on your own and we'll help you. But it didn't feel like there was a lot of parents that are, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to blah, 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 blah. And so it was kind of interesting to pick up on that. So they wanted to try to keep their kids to stay out of trouble, so they tried to teach them life lessons, but kind of towards the end, coming back around, those kids who got into trouble, they felt that they needed to find a way to get out of it, so they got themselves out of it. So it said that children had choices as individuals now versus as the 1980s. So instead of doing like what the group is doing all together, like all going to war or all going to work at the mill, they could go and branch out and feel like they could do their own things. So I also wrote down they're locked into places that have caused them to then turn their lives around. So that was kind of the three women that they talked about, where they didn't always make the best choices maybe for them at the time, got into some trouble with the law, had babies out of wedlock and very young, but then those things built them and they learned from them so that they could be better. So I wrote down overcoming adversity. So then it touched on kids going to college, because there weren't a lot of these towns kids that had gone to college, and it really the working class didn't really know a lot about coursework or assignments or deadlines. And so the first early stages of these kids going to college, their parents only could teach them so much, but then they were not prepared for saying no, or not prepared for all of the things that the real world has. And I think that we as educators need to be better at that as well, as preparing kids in school for things they're gonna need outside of school. Not things that we want them to do right now, but things that will help them be successful as best as they can. So that's where I think where families and teachers and communities all kind of come together to make sure that it's for the kid, it's as best as they can get. So sometimes they noted that that then the kids who were off at college sometimes had to come home for emergencies at home, or to help take care of a younger sibling or provide money because the families just couldn't work without an older sibling. So I kind of wrote down, dreams can't become reality unless you actually plan for them. So with the last person, I think his name was Tom or Ted, I didn't write it down, but the one who had committed suicide, and he was one of the first kids to go off with a scholarship to college, and he just got way too in over his head. And I think that happens with a lot of children nowadays with anxiety and depression, and they've been babied maybe a little bit too much at home, and they're not prepared for what is coming next, and they just get too in over their head and they don't know how to handle it. So we need to be better at that to kind of fill in those gaps for those kids. So last thing I'm going to end on is that kids need more than parents. Those after-school activities, more even than sports, are going to be able to shape them into the people that they want to be able to grow into, to be able to take those skills and transfer that into real life. So my two activities that I have are, do you feel like you were prepared to leave your home when you did? What were some setbacks or accomplishments? And then also, why are clubs / extra activities, what are they teaching our students?